session tonight. And so it will also go on Schoology by the end of the week. So next slide, I'm the one sharing. Okay. So here's what our evening looks like. We're going to start with a grounding to get to know each other a little bit better. We are going to then talk about how you can look back and reflect and celebrate the amazing work that you've done at your school this year. Some zero waste considerations in these last couple weeks of school. Some summer loving, what your Get2Green journey might look like over the summer and how to prepare for coming back to school. Time to answer your questions and give you time to share any ideas that we might not have featured tonight. And then finally, we will definitely have you out of here by 6:45. So we're going to go into breakouts, and we ask that you introduce yourself, your school, your role at the school, and then this is the time to not so humble brag. Tell us something that you are especially proud of in your environmental stewardship work with students this year. And please know that whatever step you are on the journey, we're so often surprised to hear when we meet with some of our Get2Green leads and they say, I haven't done that much. I hear about these schools that have done incredible, huge projects, and I just started a green team and there's 2 people in it. We are equally excited about your 2-person green team that didn't exist before than we are about every single student in your school doing environmental stewardship. Every little baby step really makes a huge difference in shifting the culture of our district. So please think of the thing that you are most proud of. And we will be in these breakout rooms for about 7 minutes. Highlight some of the things that we've seen schools do to celebrate their Get2Green work and to generate some ideas for what your end of the year might look like. And honestly, if you can't fit it into this year, we know there are less than 20 days of school left. It will hopefully spur some ideas as you plan ahead for the next year. Mark, are you able to share the slide deck?
Chrissy, I'm going to go ahead and let you do that only because we might have a conflict with the sound again. For some reason, I can't get it to work.
Okay. So here we are. Video click. All right. Let me make it bigger for y'all. All right. And so as we're thinking about celebrating your journey this year, we're going to focus in on 4 big ideas and what they might look like. But obviously, we find one of the neatest things about our job is visiting all 201 schools and seeing how different it is along the way. So while this might not fit exactly into the model of your school, hopefully it will give you some piece of ideas that come back. So we'll be looking at a way to highlight reel what you're doing, having a whole school assembly to celebrate your work and get all the students on board, having a smaller green team party, maybe just for your leadership team of students that are really spearheading the work, and having a stakeholder share. So thinking about the other people that are involved in this work and how it might both highlight and appreciate the work they've done and how you might be able to pull in some new allies in your work. So to start us off, we have a highlights reel from Christine Hendon at Marshall Road. She created this to share with students, parents, and like many things, it trickled up to the school board and it came back to us as, look at this amazing thing that we're doing. So we were excited to see that. And it features not just her Get2Green work, but really all of the outdoor environmental work that she's done.
Greetings, Miss Hendon's class. My name is Tim Chapman. I'm the CEO at the International Peace Garden, and Miss
Something else you could do this if you think about, you might create it, but for many of our students, creating this would be fun and easy. They often have better technology skills and can bring in different features than even we know how to do. And so it could also be something that you assign to your green team for them to share out the things that you're doing at your school. Another one, and I know that this works at some schools and would be a nightmare at other schools, but I've seen it work really well and it can be exciting, is having a whole school assembly. Inviting all the students in either at the beginning of the year. This can work as a kickoff event, kind of like we have our kickoff. It can work as an event to get the whole school on board with whatever your green team goals are, or to celebrate an accomplishment. The end of the year, it could be this school, this is Providence Elementary, and they were celebrating getting their second green flag, and the entire school, so there are about 950 students at Providence Elementary. They all came into the cafeteria, and the eco leaders at that school coordinated with you can see the kids with the buckets in the back. Those are the Providence Pounders. And so they performed at it. The green team did a recycling relay. So it was each grade level competing against one another. They were given a big bin of mixed trash and recycling, and they had to see which grade levels green team representatives could sort the fastest. And then if you look on the right with the Eco Panthers and those big signs, they designed cheers for the whole school to participate in. So if you think about a high school pep rally, you can have a green pep rally. And their goals were really simple: lights off, less waste, and learn outside. So it was a kind of simple call and repeat. So when I say lights, you say off, lights off, and so on. That got everyone really excited and reminded them of the goal. So even though it was the end of the year, they had already won their green flag, it gave them the opportunity to remind students of goals that honestly work just as well at home and throughout the rest of their lives. And it's one of those, they found some cool musical chants that would really stick with them. Another thing that you can consider is inviting those of us at Get2Green. Invite your resource teachers, invite our whole team. We want to come and celebrate with you. We are happy once you get that green flag, or we can borrow a green flag. I know many of you will hear the announcement that you have won a green flag, before you get the actual one, we can borrow a green flag and present it to you ceremonially, because we want everyone to also see that you are the one that should be celebrated too, along with your students, because you are guiding this work. So please help us to commemorate that work that you're doing. If you get a certificate, you get a flag. We can help make things if you want to. But even if we're just coming to watch and participate, we would love to be there and be part of your celebration and excitement. On a smaller scale, if you just want to celebrate at the end of the year with your leadership team, your green team, we've seen a lot of neat ideas for celebrations. Some are service learning projects, students painting rocks for the garden, or at Shrevewood Elementary, they had been partnering all year long with an animal shelter as part of their service learning and their environmental learning. And so they took clothing and towels that people weren't using anymore and knotted them and braided them to create dog toys. There's a really great video on our Instagram of the green team actually building them and creating them and holding them up. And you can just feel the excitement in the room. And then they kept things out of the landfill, and they were able to provide dog toys for the shelter that they've been working with all year long. So you can think about a service project part, maybe a big planting project for you want to do a summer cover crop for your beds. Maybe your green team does that together. It's a time that you can celebrate where you've been, but also think about where you're going next. So a video like we just looked at, you could do just with your green team. What have we accomplished this year? So often in education, we don't take the time to do that even for ourselves. Really, what did I do? And when you list out the things and discuss it with your students, it's exciting and it will generate that sense of pride among them. And then ask your green team. They might not be your green team next year, but what legacy do you want to leave? What do you see us doing next year? How can we build on our successes? And so taking the time to reflect and look ahead will get you really set up for an exciting and easy start to next year, because you won't be starting from scratch. Another thing that our team has created are these certificates of participation. I know at green teams that I've worked with, at the end of the year, we have something really simple, like a popsicle party. And so we use our courtyard space, and all the students come out and they get the freebie pops, and we individually customize these Get2Green certificates of participation for their work in the green team, or whatever cool name. We were the Eco Panthers at Providence that you have for your school. And these customizable certificates will be shared tomorrow in the Trellis. When the Trellis comes out this week, you will be able, for your community, and there's different options. So if you have several Get2Green leaders, there's more than one slot. So there's different ways that you can customize these so they are ready to go for your school. Next, I'm going to have Rachel Clausen, our resource teacher from Southeast, talk about other ways that you can reflect and amplify your work.
So I'm sharing this example here, and it happens to be from Lewis High School. And the slide says why portfolio and timeline share. And for me, this was huge because this work doesn't happen in a single year. It happens over a ton of time with a ton of people involved. And so whether or not it's pictures with students, or and sometimes even pictures that are about the space changing over time, if it's outside or even inside, what kind of new features are you adding in your cafeteria, like a food sharing table? Seeing those stark differences over time of your students and your efforts, it's a big deal. I very much really appreciated that I would come out and look at the space since I got to Lewis back in 2011, and I would look at this space and it was very empty at first. And I would take pictures, and once students started asking, hey, like, no one's ever using those garden beds, is that something we can do something with? We started to talk about planning, and we worked with groups like Get2Green and Earth Sangha, and students proposed what to do. And over time, this ended up being a place where we ended up getting the R3 planting, which is revitalize, restore, revitalize, and replant. Probably switched all of those around, but same idea. And that's through Fairfax County Stormwater. And they still do that program. There is a 2-year wait list, and that can make things kind of happen pretty fast. But similarly, there are other people like us at Get2Green and people in your school building that might help as allies over time. And what we really want to see is who's involved, how's the space changing, to celebrate that this was a group effort. We can switch slides at this point. And similarly, whether it's the actual picture of this space, a lot of schools map. This is an example from Lynbrook, where they're not only collaborating with lots of people in their building, but they're also collaborating with us and master gardeners. And they really wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page. And they used maps. They specifically used Google Slides to facilitate this map making. So that way everyone was talking about the same garden space within the garden spaces, and being able to contribute to conversations, making sure everyone felt comfortable with what things were getting used for what. And truly, this should be a student leadership effort too. Areas could be designated to different student groups if there's multiple in a school building, which is sometimes the case in a secondary school. But in general, whether it's a digital map or paper map, these can be used to celebrate. And if they're done over time, you can even see the changes in the drawn or digitally drawn maps over time as well. And just like these two things, in general, I would just super suggest, whether it's just throwing your photos that you're taking or maybe students are taking into a folder, but even better, maybe they end up in slides, and maybe student leaders end up adding captions. Captions including like, how long were you doing that type of activity? Was it something that got started in 2017 versus you didn't start that until later on down the road? But in general, these allow you to see where were you taking your efforts in maintenance of these different projects over time, because you don't always need to do a different project. Celebrating that this is an effort you've been doing for years, that's amazing. The way we used to celebrate was students would leave a legacy rock. They would write their year date, which was really encouraged, which year they were graduating, and they would write some sort of environmental message. Sometimes they'd end up being goofy, like the rock looked to me like a pizza and I want you to be happy. And here's a picture of a pizza, all the way to, hey, that trip to the Chesapeake Bay overnight, it really impacted me. But from starting with a very simple shade garden off to the bottom left to eventually getting plant sales, to having that plant sale money being able to buy really cool trellises where there's master gardeners coming out to celebrate. These things allowed us to share at staff meetings and with these community partners, including with Get2Green, what we were doing. And when you're especially taking these photos with students, we would really encourage you to double check, do everybody in that photo, do they have are they truly not a student with a photo opt out? That's something that someone in your main office should have, that small list. Knowing that allows you to be able to share those things with us, and we can celebrate, amplify your projects and your celebrations. And hopefully you're also celebrating with any other groups you're collaborating with externally as well. Similarly, you could also just internally celebrate from just, here's our big update. On the left-hand side, you can see that this is a previously made Chantilly little newsletter where they were updating, hey, like, we need you to know if you're going to the outdoor space later in the end of the spring, please know that there's these technology changes. We want to make sure all teachers are on the same page. We are really celebrating that you're going out there, but please know that there's this change to how you would go outside and use that space. You could also collaborate Like on the right-hand side, this is an example from Crestwood Elementary where they collaborated with their SBIT and also who was their webmaster, and they celebrated what they were doing for their MeWe and put it on their school website. These things are all good, no matter if it's just a email, it's something that you send to your PTA, it's something that you share with your families through your own newsletter. Any sort of share out is worthwhile because you're saying, hey, like, look at these amazing things that we're doing, and you should celebrate it. It took time and effort from you and your students.
Building on what Rachel just said, so other ways other than newsletters that you might share, if your group has their own website, if you've been, this is the Longfellow Rangers site that they update with their naturalist findings, and they continually update that throughout the year, and they pull in outside community members. So that can be a way to elevate what you're doing beyond your school community. Or using social media. In Get2Green, we use a lot of Instagram and X, and we're just dipping a toe into Threads, but it elevates beyond your community to attract new allies. It gets people really excited about what you're doing because often I'm shocked when people don't know, even maybe the classroom next to you, the teacher doesn't know the neat things that are happening. It can inspire other schools, especially if it's a broader reach like social media. I constantly get ideas and I've been sharing them to highlights on Instagram. So if you're looking to do zero waste, you can see what other schools are doing. And often that's just the spark you need to start it at your own school. And it can strengthen support of this work. We know how excited we all are that there is a stipended Get2Green position at every single school, that we have some seed money. If you've looked at the budget that they'll be voting on later this week, there is increased seed money. We're hiring a new resource teacher. Our group, our initiative is expanding at this point, but that is by the grace of community support. And so if we can keep that support and people really start to see the value and incredible things and opportunities our students are getting, this is one way for that to happen beyond what we can just share. Another thing that has been very popular and joyful is celebratory swag. As teachers, we know we love getting free stuff and the swag, and having the Get2Green logo, it really builds that sense of community and belonging in place. But it also helps, again, amplify what you're doing at your school. If you've ever worked at an elementary school or had an elementary school child and you heard them covet that patrol badge and sash, we know who the patrols are right away. We're excited to see them, and that is an aspirational goal for many students. When they see something to work towards, it's something they want to be a part of. Often something as simple as a lanyard, like you can see here on the right. That is from Silverbrook Elementary. They made these green lanyards and green teams for all their students as they're doing the work around the school. On the left, this is Providence Elementary at the C's. And I will say for Providence, the teachers designed the green team shirt and had them made for their leadership crew. In the center, this is from Rachel Carson Middle School. And I reached out to Ellen Bickford and Patty Walsh, who are the leaders there, and asked them how this shirt came about. And they explained that this is their green team. You can see it's pretty big, and they are divided into several subcommittees. So one subcommittee wrote the eco code for their school, and they decided to take that eco code and make that the basis for a design. And they just told the kids at the time it was just this graphic design for posters and things like that to publicize their group. And so as a team, everyone discussed and voted on what were the phrases that were the most important. And they're lucky in that their school is named after a very famous environmentalist. So they also found different quotes by Rachel Carson and voted on which one was their favorite as a team. And then another subcommittee took all of that information and did mock-ups of two logo designs that incorporated those phrases and the quote. And they shared them with a whole larger green team, and they voted. And they were thinking this was just going to be printed out, but the green team leaders surprised them by turning this into a shirt and giving them the shirts. And then they went a step further and gave the shirts as appreciation gifts to their whole custodial staff who had shifted how they worked this year to really increase recycling and reduce waste. They gave them to the administrators that had been supportive of their work. They gave them to outside people that had supported and bolstered their work throughout. So this became a marketing tool of kinds for their Get2Green, and they have plans next year to do a similar process, but open it up to the whole school to vote on what those phrases should be, what the logo might look like. And I have the logistic information. If afterward you want to follow up and say what vendor did they use, those kinds of things. But what we found, most schools are creating shirts for other things already, and you've had those vetted vendors, you have the relationship with them already. And so talking to the finance person at your school about who that is probably your best first step in getting that done. So we just bombarded you with a ton of ideas and pictures from other schools. What we're going to do in this breakout is take the time to think about your school. What might be a good culminating activity to celebrate the work that you've done? We are going to have about 7 minutes together in a breakout, generally same breakouts, about 5 people. If there's anyone new, because we had some people share late, please catch them up with a quick catch up with your names and schools and share your ideas for how you might culminate your work this year. Hopefully you had a chance to think about something that you might do to reflect and celebrate the neat work you've done. It's why we have our celebration backgrounds today, because we really want to celebrate and highlight you. Kim is going to give us some ideas too when we consider our end of the year fun that's already happening. How can we have a green spin on those celebrations?
So I would love for everyone to try for a plastic-free celebration. So think about the food and drink that you'll be sharing. Can the participants use reusable water bottles, for instance? Or if not everyone has one, maybe use some kind of dispenser and paper cups that at least are compostable, and rather than single-use plastic bottles. I lived in Europe for a long time, and the food that we purchased at the grocery store did not come with multiple layers of plastic packaging. So this has taken a little while to get used to. So try very hard to use finger foods so that they don't need plastic silverware. Maybe get food that's not individually wrapped in plastic, and then think about how you might communicate both before and during the event. So for instance, you could post a QR code that goes to the agenda instead of printing out more copies than you probably will need for people to have that paper. And also think about what goes home with the participants at the end of the day. They don't need a lot of plastic swag that will just be thrown away or broken on the way home. Again, my own personal experience as the mother of 4 kids, there were times when things didn't even make it all the way to our house before they were not useful anymore. So if you're going to send something home with kids, make sure it's something that they can use, maybe a plant or a craft that they've made using recyclable materials, something that brands your Get2Green Club. So decals for their reusable water bottles, for instance. You can really challenge your students to plan a zero waste party. So they should be asked how they can reduce and reuse and recycle. So for instance, you could use cloth tablecloth coverings and reusable decorations that they could then use again in years to come. And then challenge them to get the message out and make this a school-wide thing. Mantua, for example, includes reasons for not using single-use plastic on their morning news show in the weeks leading up to the end of year celebrations for all the classrooms. I did create a sustainable events checklist for you to take a look at, which just lists all kinds of things to consider as you're planning those end of year celebrations. This is a very important thing. Make sure that that it's very clear what can be recycled and where it should be recycled before people begin to eat and mill around. You might want to make a big announcement. Here's where the recycling bin is. Here's where the compost bin is, that kind of thing, so that not everything just gets dumped into the garbage, and that things that are not recyclable don't get dumped into your recycling bin. So just clear signage and directions for everyone are really an important part of it as well. All right, I think so. Give you a minute to look over the sustainable events checklist, and please feel free to add any other ideas into the chat.
Yeah, Deborah wrote about treks. We found that Kim and I at the big showcases where we have lots of kids come in and we have plastic tablecloths at the end of the night instead of throwing them away. Deborah, that's exactly what we do. We gather up all of the plastic tablecloths, and they do count as plastic film, and we take them to the nearest school that we know is doing treks. And so when you get this slide deck, you'll see the treks program is linked there, right in that middle picture. That's a treks bin. And to learn more about the treks program, you can just click on that and everyone will be able to get there too.
Yes.
Thank you so much for mentioning. Been big fans of it at Westfield for a while, so thanks.
Yeah, we had a huge global classroom project celebration. I think we used 40 tablecloths, and lucky Mason Crest got to have them all as part of their treks program. So
yeah, it's funny, in our academy class, sometimes people fight over our plastic film. So, all right, Rachel, can you go to the next slide? So another thing to think about with that is, if you've ever looked at our recycling dashboard where it has the recycling and the waste, you will notice the biggest jump is at the end of the year when we're cleaning out. Even if you don't use lockers at your school, we're cleaning out classrooms, and it's our time when we see the biggest amount of waste. And so with it being just a couple weeks away now, which is exciting, we wanted to give you a toolkit for thinking about what it could look like at your school to green the end of the year clean out event. And a lot of it is just planning ahead and labeling. Staples has a lot of repurposing, recycling initiatives, things that cannot be recycled by the county, such as any writing implement, markers, crayons, pens, pencils, even mechanical pencils, literally anything you can write with, you can drop off at Staples for free. They partner with TerraCycle to recycle those printer cartridges. Thinking ahead to at the beginning of the school year, the things that we might go out and buy for our classrooms, like folders, like plastic folders or composition notebooks that have had 2 pages used in them. Thinking about having a donate bin there of supplies that could be used in the next school year. And there's lots of different initiatives that we see nationwide and in different schools. And still, I can tell you, walking around in schools at the end of the year, we'll see those huge black trash bags where the custodians will give every class 3 or 4 of them. And we just think it's such a visual reminder of how much waste we're creating. And so 7 Generations has created this really cool Oh my God, was I muted the whole time?
You got to 7 generation, then you bopped out.
I was like, wow, I've been just talking to myself here. The 7 Generations has created this really cool clean out guide with printable posters and step-by-step guides for what it could look like at your school. And we don't have a ton of time, but if we were in class, I would pass this packet out to you and give you some time to look through it. And so we're going to do that virtually. I just dropped the link in the chat. We're going to give you just 5 minutes. Open up the link. Rachel will start the timer as soon as I'm done talking. And just for 5 minutes, look through and see what's there. Often, if we wait till after professional development, we never go back and click that link. So I want to make sure that you have the time to actually look through and see what might be useful to you. So 5 minutes, explore. You can also look through, do a quick search for Staples if you want to see what those recycling initiatives are. Great suggestion. You can bookmark this. It will also be in the slide deck and in our on Schoology and in our newsletter at the end of the year.
Hey, Chrissy, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's Bev. The slideshow that you did in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
is it going to be available or how can I find it?
It'll be all on Schoology. So
Okay,
this slide deck will be on Schoology, and that slide deck from the beginning is linked via YouTube. She created that slideshow into a video, and it's on YouTube, so it'll be on there, so you could use it as an example. And I'm happy
awesome.
to provide you her name. I'm sure she would also let anyone know how to
Yeah.
accomplish this.
Yes, just shoot me an email with that because I like the paving and so lots of things she did. So that was she did a really, really good job. Thank you so much, all you guys,
Yeah,
for the presentation. Have a good evening.
we're not done yet.
Oh, my bad. Where we go? I'm sorry. I was backing up and letting my daughter out of the car. So yes, sorry.
All right, next slide, Rachel. In the chat, we are going to ask you to write one thing, one small action you may try before the end of the school year to reduce waste. Some of you already dropped some ideas in, but there are 65 more of you. So if everyone can drop in just one thing, let's blow up the chat with ideas. And the good news is for the first time ever, we are using the AI companion to summarize our chat tonight. And so hopefully these ideas will all be in a beautiful list that we can share out with you as well. Thank you for sharing your ideas for end of the year. It sounds like everyone is going away with a little bit greener end of school year. All right, Rachel, next slide. We are going to turn it over to Karen to think about considerations for your outdoor spaces as the school year comes to an end.
So yes, I don't know how many of you have gardens planted at your school. Hopefully, you have been enjoying your outdoor spaces this spring. However, I do know that when it gets to the end of the year, there may be this tendency to get ready to walk out the door and not look back for a while. You may be noticing that things are starting to take off in your garden if you have one planted, and that growth is going to continue in a robust manner in your absence. So if you want to hopefully return to a healthy and productive garden, there are a few things to take into consideration, and some of them are really not that difficult, but the key is getting a jump on it. And I know that that's probably a bit of an ask with all the things that you're trying to do as you wrap up your school year. But if you do have a garden, perhaps you have had some volunteers working alongside you. Maybe you have some families interested in continuing that care. We have had some schools use Sign Up Geniuses to have families adopt the garden for a week and just kind of oversee it and take care of it. The other thing I would highly, highly recommend is for you to communicate any of your plans with your custodial staff, and do that as soon as you know what your plans may be, especially if you are enlisting volunteers. One of the things that you might consider doing is just having a quick meeting. If you have a PTA meeting that's still scheduled before the end of the year, maybe having someone pop in and make a pitch for some volunteers to help with the garden. If you do have a garden, especially an edible garden where you have things that may be harvested over the course of the summer, they are going to need care. And that includes watering and weeding and harvesting. So you may want to consider putting together a little bit of a packet of the types of help you're going to need, where things are going to be located, particularly if you have an interior garden. People will need to have access, so they'll need to know how to do that. The other thing that is can be kind of a challenge is knowing how to access the water. Most of the water requires a key to get in to open the little panel and turn the water on. So it's important to know who is going to be taking care of that. Maybe it's going to be kept in your front office, or maybe a custodian has access to it, but that is one piece of information that's going to be really important for you to know. If you are setting up a team of people, it would probably be a good idea to have one person just be the contact person. And this person doesn't have to be a master gardener either. It's just somebody who is a contact, who knows what needs to be done and can communicate, especially if any problems arise. And there may be things that happen during the summer, particularly if we have some severe weather on either end, whether we have big storms or whether we have prolonged periods of heat and dry weather. So think of a way you're going to communicate that, whether it's going to be via email. You can use social media. Some schools have areas where they can actually post things in writing in their garden area, but as long as all your volunteers know how you're going to be communicating, that should work pretty well. And with edible gardens, if you have planted warm weather crops that will be producing, you have to be thinking about harvesting. So coming up with a plan as to how often you're going to harvest. Typically, warm weather crops will benefit from being harvested at about twice a week. So whether or not you're going to share that bounty with your volunteers, whether there's going to be arrangements made to take it to a food pantry, or if your school is open during the summer and you have a summer program going on, you may actually use your front office as a place to distribute additional produce you may be gathering. Well, the other thing you may want to think about too is just monitoring your garden, particularly for diseases and pests. When we have this hot, humid weather, that is just kind of an invitation for some of these problems to arise, especially if you're growing things. And I know a lot of schools are growing pumpkins, perhaps, squash, cucumbers. They may be a little bit susceptible to mildew. You can cut that stuff off, and that's actually beneficial for the plants. Harvesting will actually encourage more growth and more production. So you want to keep an eye on diseases, pests. The other thing that I would highly recommend for anybody who has an edible garden on an exterior part of their building is to think about protecting it, particularly from deer. So physical barriers really work well if you have access to any deer netting or anything like that, to put it over your gardens. They do like beans also. They're fond of beans and tomatoes. So if you're not growing any of these vegetables in your garden right now, and you have cool weather crops that are starting to go to seed, you can probably remove them. You can allow them to go to seed. They're not going to bear any additional growth. They'll wait until the soil cools down, and you'll see additional growth in the fall. But you may see a lot of weeds coming up with it as well. So if you're not going to be able to tend that garden, it might be best to take everything out and cover those beds. And I did want to just make a note about composting before I jump to that slide. If you are composting at your school, if you've been composting any food scraps from your cafeteria and you're using tumblers, that's another thing that might need some attention. Another thing you may want to discuss with your custodial staff to make sure that those tumblers are being turned and not left to sit there, so that you don't have anything producing any odors if the balance isn't correct. If you have outdoor bins where you've been composting yard waste, it's probably fine to leave it just as it is. But if you have volunteers who are going to be in the garden, turning that would be great, because these warm temperatures are going to just speed up the decomposition process. Okay, now you can bump ahead. So about those bare spaces, here's 3 really good examples. The bed all the way over on the left is completely bare. Now, some of your schools may have just recently gotten some raised beds and they have soil in them, and maybe you haven't had a chance to plant anything in them yet. I highly recommend you cover them either with a tarp, or you could do a cover crop. It may be a little bit late to do it, or you could just put cardboard down and weigh it down with some wood or rocks, because if you do not, you will come back with a bumper crop of weeds, guaranteed. And that's just going to slow down anything you want to do in the fall. So don't feel badly about not having gotten out there to plant anything yet, but you do want to protect that soil over the summer. The second one is a picture of what a cover crop would look like. And there is time to still plant one because it will germinate fairly quickly. Cover crops, the advantage of using them is that they get cut back and turned back into the soil, so they will provide additional nutrients for your soil. Again, this is going to be something that may require a little bit of maintenance. So if you don't have somebody to watch over your garden, I probably would recommend covering it, just like the bed is over on the right-hand side. So that has a tarp that's laid over the soil and just has a big wooden piece to weigh it down so that it doesn't get blown over in the wind. And you can go ahead to, and oh, you know what? I did forget one other thing too. Speaking of your gardens and what to anticipate, another thing you might think about is thinking about a midsummer cleanup too. If you do have an active group of volunteers, that might be something you want to plan. Or think about planning a back to school cleanup before classes start so that your gardens are ready to use, because there are so many things you can do in your gardens in the fall. And there is nothing more discouraging than coming back to school and feeling like you have to start from scratch again. So just taking a couple steps like this so that your gardens are ready to use in the fall is really doesn't take that much time. Okay. So the next one is if you have planted, particularly if you have a pollinator garden or a sensory garden, if you planted, they will come. And of course, what I'm talking about are our beneficial insects and our monarchs. If your garden is new, and I know a lot of schools have been involved in planting milkweed recently, it will require some care. New plants are babies. They do need some care until they get established. So making sure they're watered. I mean, we had a really hot day today, and even with all of the rain that we recently had, I've gone out and checked pots and garden beds, and they're actually dry down to an inch or two. It's amazing how quickly that water is going to evaporate. So make sure you have some plan in place to make sure that those plants have a good start. And the other thing too is deadheading in perennial gardens or in sensory gardens. If there is somebody who's going to be coming in to take care of that, deadheading means just cutting off the spent flowers, and it's actually beneficial to the plant. It's going to produce more flowers, which produces more sources for nectar for the visitors who are coming. And the other thing is just making sure that the weeds are staying under control. And you can do that again by making sure these areas are mulched. And that's probably already been done in areas that have R3 plantings, for example. But even those gardens, if they have been recently planted, say this spring, I would arrange to have somebody come by and check and water it, especially if we go, and we have gone in the past for a week or two with high temperatures and no rain. And that's really deadly for new plantings. And the other thing I wanted to just point out is milkweed maintenance in schools. And I know this is true at Flint Hill. So I'm going to shout out to Beth because this is something she may want to take a look at. If you have established plantings of milkweed on your school property, particularly the common milkweed, which really gets pretty tall, that is susceptible of getting blown over and knocked down if we have high winds and storms. So if they're in vulnerable areas, I would first of all thin them a little bit so that there's the wind can pass through them pretty easily, or arrange to stake some of them. Because once they fall over like that, they are really of no use to visiting monarchs. So take a look, do an assessment, just kind of swing through your garden spaces and come up with priorities for some tasks that might need to be done so that when you return, the things that you've invested your time and resources in will be there to benefit you when you get back. So those are really all the tips that I have for you for your gardens before you leave. Hopefully you will have flourishing gardens when you come back, full of visitors, full of monarchs and all the other wonderful things that come to visit us in our gardens. And also if you have those beds maintained, they'll be ready to plant for fall with our fall crops. So, and if you have any questions, reach out to me anytime. I'll be happy to help you.
Yeah, and also feel free to reach out to us or any of us out here, your resource teachers. We can share examples of what some schools have done for like what their sign of geniuses might look like, what their summer directions might look like for maintaining their spaces. And so let us know how we can support you with those. Also, you have cultivated these incredible spaces or maintained them throughout this year, and think about reaching out to people that use your building over the summer to continue to use and grow those outdoor spaces. So here are some ideas from different schools. Most schools have a kindergarten orientation at some part of the summer, usually towards the end of the summer. But at some schools, they use the outdoor space to do. Here you can see an assistant principal doing a read aloud to all the students about the first day of kindergarten under the tree on the right there. You can see Alan Borhauer, who is the Get2Green leader at Providence Elementary, leading the students in a courtyard safari, the courtyard kindergarten safari, where they're given hand lenses and a scavenger hunt, and they and their parents explore the outdoors. So it's really introducing that outdoor learning space to our youngest learners as they enter the school. In the middle there, that's Centerville Elementary. They use their space throughout the summer, and they have monthly social gatherings where families can come in. Maybe it's a movie night, maybe it's a staff barbecue, but they have different options that bring the community back to the outdoor spaces of the school, even when school is out for summer. And they take that opportunity to maybe have a weed a bed station. It's shocking how students that may never want to do a single weed at home, when they're at school and they're with friends, it's really fun to dig into the garden and get dirty. And so taking that opportunity to use your outdoor spaces there. You also see a summer bingo. We are in the process of creating a Get Outside with Get2Green summer bingo. Kind of, if you used our Earth Week resources, we modeled it on that. And it's to share with families to get outside over the summer and keep playing and learning and connecting with nature. So there's lots of opportunities. We're connecting them with various community resources. So sometimes getting outside can be intimidating. If you are not a natural outdoor person, that might be a barrier for you to take your family outside and continue learning. So these are really simple ideas that might get families outside. For those of us that grew up in this area, we don't know that there are some very unique things to this part of the world. And so I know growing up, we caught fireflies. Even going out and sitting and watching the fireflies, that only happens in certain parts of the world, that you're able to even see them at night in summer. And so really appreciating what we have, having a simple picnic, and it doesn't have to be anywhere exotic. It can be, I know my family, one of our favorite was we did a breakfast picnic once. And the novelty of that really drew us outside, and it did not have to be a production. It ended up giving us an opportunity to be together as a family and outside and learning and spur conversations. And sometimes families just need that little idea, that spark that helps them move their kids outside. So that resource will come out next month in the Trellis. So we encourage you to share that with your school communities. Next slide. So as we come towards the end of our sharing time together, we want to give you the most valuable part of our PDs, which is really connecting with your colleagues. We're going to go into different breakout groups, so you should have different people in them this time. And we're asking, you'll have about 10 minutes to talk in those groups, 10, 12 minutes. We want you to connect with the colleagues in that and think about how your stewardship efforts might continue through these last weeks of school, when you might be a little frazzled, throughout the summer and into next school year. I know on our team, we were generating ideas, and one of our teammates brought up the idea that many of our students go on vacation where they can continue their stewardship with their family. They do a beach cleanup, or if they're walking around playgrounds in their neighborhood, they do a cleanup. And so enabling them and empowering them to continue this journey that you have set them on. What might that look like? And then the beginning of the school year, I think I might be murder if we were in person, and I said this aloud, but it's going to be here before we know it. And so how might we plan for that so that it's not that rush? I know that first week back, it's like a fire hose of tasks and information. Sorry, Frank. So at the end of the year, how might you front load the thinking and already generate the ideas for how you're going to start the year off with a bang? So I'm going to open up those breakouts, and it should move you automatically into them. We are here if you need initiative till fourth quarter, but now it's already started. And so you can carry that success into next year, which you have already been dropping so many incredible ideas into the chat, but we have some time now to answer any questions or for you to drop ideas for other people about how you are doing end of the year celebrations, anything over summer, or greening kind of this end of the year process.
Okay, we've had a couple. Do you want to move to the next slide? Whoever is doing it. It just says questions, but we've had a couple of questions in the chat. The first one was, will you share the slideshow? And absolutely, the slideshow will be shared in Schoology in the resources folder. And then within resources at the very bottom, there's one called professional development opportunities. And then within that, one of the last folders is recordings and resources from after school specials. So that's what this is. So Christy will post it there. We've been adding the links that you have put in the chat to the bottom of the slide. So you'll have those as well. And yes, Christine's video will be included in there too. So that's great. We also, let's see, someone asked, are we allowed to use our seed money for swag? And the answer is yes. If it's swag that is doing positive branding for the Get2Green projects that you're doing, like decals for your reusable water bottles or t-shirts or bags to carry library books, things like that. Yes, absolutely. We want you to promote Get2Green and share those things, but it's not really supposed to be used for like pizza parties. It's supposed to be used for actual physical things. And then I noticed that Joyce just said, we need to address custodian involvement in our initiative. So if anyone has ideas to share with Joyce, I do recommend that you invite them to your Get2Green meetings. The kids love to ask them questions and learn about what their job is. So that's a great place to start. Oh yeah, that's what Consuelo said. Invite them to your eco school team and have them participate. So many great ideas have been shared. Yep, and someone said the same thing, that the students have their morning meeting and the custodian comes to their green team meetings as well. Yeah, I love that.
And I just wanted to hop into, because there's a point I did neglect to mention, and this is a great time to have conversations with your custodial teams, especially for those schools that started some new gardens. If you have a new garden in an area that a custodian is not aware of, they really need to know about it. Make sure those areas are marked. Again, the weeds will take over really quickly, and if the staff can't see that something has been planted there, they may inadvertently mow it down. And the other thing too is, if you do have a new garden, check to see that if you've placed it in an area, it is not in, that it is in a no-mow zone. And you can do that by checking your school map on the hub. You go to the grounds operations, and there is a mow site. And if your area is not included in a no-mow zone, you need to let them know. Otherwise, you really are at risk of having that garden mowed down over the summer.
Oh, and I love the ideas that people are putting about the custodial staff. Have them be the ones that harvest a lot of those summer vegetables that come in when your students are not around. That's a great idea. Another question that's come up is what suggestions you have for times for meetings? After school is tough because not all students who want to join can, because they're bus riders. Same with some before school times. I love a couple of elementary schools that I've talked to. I know one I work with in particular, they have a club block where kids can choose if they want to be in the Get2Green club or if they want to be in a special musical group or an art club. They just have it kind of spread. All the sixth graders are spread out for an hour in different clubs. So that's where their green team, I believe that was Annandale Terrace, that worked out really well for them. So talk to your admins now about scheduling for next year and try and to do that if possible. That's an elementary school thing. I think lunch times are great for that. I know with middle and high school, there are certain days when there are late buses, so that's always a possibility as well.
Or advisory time. And just to plug, our August and September after school special will be the same after school special repeated. And it's going to be about what it might look like, what green teams look like at different schools and what different models are out there. So that will be part of that after school special.
Yeah, Consuelo says they have once a month meetings and there are 2 representatives from every class. Kate Shrimpton says they do it during morning meeting time. And yeah, so I would say, a variety of times. Some people do it during recess.
And again, we're going to have in November, the head of the custodial training will be coming to an after school special to answer any questions too. We'll explain like how the training happens of custodians and answer your questions. So we're having that again in November.
I would love to highlight some of these great ideas we've had. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. Lunchtimes vary and it's open to all grades. Yeah, Alexa said does make it very challenging. I would say your green team, you know, your student green team is important and vital, but getting other teachers to join your teacher green team will be helpful too, because they can help with some of that.
And the who communicates to custodians question is, we get that a lot. And so all custodians do get a standard FCPS training on what needs to be recycled and the regulations from facilities. However, their direct supervisors are your principals. And so while they get that guidance at the beginning of the year, if there is an issue with it, then you can take that regulation from our website and go talk to your principal, or better yet, have your green team talk to your principal about what students are noticing and why it's important. And then have your students talk to your custodian, or your students and your green team and your principal maybe all together have a meeting and talk about like what barriers are getting in the way of it. They are trained, I will say that they are trained how to recycle and to do other solid waste, but they are told not to spend any time doing the sorting on their own. So if they go to pick up a recycling bin and it is contaminated, they are just to count that as trash and move on. So another thing could be having students really be diligent about doing the sorting.
Okay, Alexis ordered one of the kilowatt devices that Brian Schwank had offered to us from the science department and is asking if there are videos or instructions on how to use it. And Chrissy, I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, they are. The instructions for how to use them are actually already on Schoology. We have loan kits that are energy audit kits, and it includes that, and it's a resource within. So if you go on Schoology and find resources, lending library, and click on the energy resource kit, we do have a instruction sheet. But to be honest with you, it might be more complicated that you plug it into the wall and you plug a device into it, and you can see there are certain devices that are energy vampires that even when they're not in use, they're pulling a small amount of energy. And there are others like a toaster. If you plug it in and you're not using it, it's not going, you can just read on the meter and you can choose the buttons are just what your readout is. So if you want it in watts, kilowatts, amps, you won't use any energy, but then when you push it down and toast something, you will see the amount of energy it uses. So it's pretty point and shoot. But if you want me to send it to you directly, send me an email.
I'll just go look. We did try it, and it didn't come with any directions at all. So we watched a couple of videos and we tried to do it, but I just wanted to see if there was anything specific.
Yeah, and I will say also on there are how you might use it to do an energy audit and some like really cool printable resources from National Wildlife Federation, and from Maine has these really great like ready to use lesson plans with the kilowatt meter. So that's also on there.
I thought it would be good for us to start the new year out, and that when we're doing our audit. Well, thank you guys for everything.
Other questions or ideas?
I just wanted to, I'm sure I already put it in the chat, but I just want to make sure we ordered way more. They're really super long metal. They're called landscaping staples, but they're great for holding down cardboard. We have lots and lots of them that we ended up not needing for our getting ready for R3. So if any schools want some to be able to just lay down cardboard and not have it blow away and look like, you know what, after the first windstorm, just email me, Katie Shower. I'm happy to pony you some of those because you bang them down with a hammer and they'll stay all summer. And so you don't, it'll hold down the weeds really well if you just, lasagna the cardboard, and it's a lot less work than laying down mulch.
Okay, that's great. Oh boy, let's see. Get2Green leadership proposed. Yeah, I think that schedules are up to the individual school. So yes, we can advocate for the morning meeting thing, but the best advocate in your school is you. So please talk to your admin about scheduling stuff.
And I would say even in secondary schools, it gets really complicated, right? If in a high school, there's maybe one late bus day, and all these students, if they are able to stay and or interested in staying after school, they're likely the kid that's doing multiple clubs. And so sometimes we found some schools are doing really awesome things like combining clubs to have an event. Hayfield Secondary, shout out. They combined with their green team and their garden club, because a lot of these secondary schools have multiple related teams. So making sure you combine, maybe you have a key club. I really suggest trying to find those allies, because it is really complicated, and just sometimes it is trial and error, and a couple steps forward, a couple steps back, and that's okay. It's going to be a process.
Oh, there's a couple of other good ideas. Alexis says, get the cardboard from your art teacher from their poster paper boxes. Those are nice and big. The cafeteria also is a good source for cardboard. And then your SAC teacher, if you have school age childcare after school, those are great kids to get involved. Oh, and Michelle is sharing her summer watering schedule that she created in a Google Doc. Let's see. Another question that came up was about communicating recycling policies, not just to students, but also to staff, because according to their custodians, the staff are the ones who are not putting the recyclables in the recycling bin. So again, anyone wants to add to the chat how they're handling the staff communication, that would be great.
I think it's amazing, like them just sharing like how they're truly feeling about it, and just honoring that's what they're noticing. That just shows that they're building out that relationship. We've seen a couple schools where students actually like make thank you signs for their custodial staff. There's ways to build that relationship and thank them. But in general, it is a tough thing to navigate. But as much as we can, hearing out what they're seeing on their end. I know I definitely was called the lady who had all the soil in her room, because we were tracking in dirt and soil and plants everywhere. And that was truly a burden for them. So with us and our team, when we had some extra funds, we decided to get those shoe cool like wipers. It's like putting in your shoe in like a car wash situation, but without any water, and trying to make sure that we were honoring that. It was super disheartening for them to see all the extra mud we were tracking in, and trying our best to meet halfway. I know everyone is always trying to do that, but if we can honor what they're saying and try to hear them, that's always the best case scenario.
Yeah, sorry, I was the one that did the recycling policies. If you guys have any resources that you'd be willing to share when it comes to like presenting that to staff, I've been tasked with for the upcoming school year, doing a little blurb at like the welcome back staff meetings to say, hey, please bleep 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 recycle correctly. So if you have suggestions for how to do that effectively to adults, that would be incredible. I've heard a couple of people say the same thing, that their custodians are like, the students know what to do, but like you put one Starbucks mug in the recycling bin and the whole thing has to get trashed. So,
and we are this summer, our summer curriculum development project is creating a zero waste toolkit for you to use. And part of that will be how to use with different stakeholders. And so we will have that created for you. And our goal is to have that before you come back to school. So it will be in there. We've thought of that.
thank you.
Yes.
So Alexis, I love that idea of giving potted plants to some of your stakeholders. It's a great thing, because your kids can be the ones that are, your students can be the ones that have planted and those seeds to grow those plants to give away.
Any more questions that you have, they can go on our exit ticket because we are nearing the end of our time together at our last after school special of this school year. So Rachel, if you can go to our last slide. So we're going to ask you to reflect on your learning with this exit ticket. It'll make you think through some of the topics we covered tonight and also give you the opportunity. We always follow up on questions from our PDs. And so you can even put in those additional questions to, like, if you need a resource for us to send to you directly, you can put it in there as an additional question and we'll make sure to get it to you as we do the follow-up. So once you're done with that, you are welcome to log off, maybe go for an evening walk now that it's cooling off a little bit, and enjoy this beautiful weather before the rain moves in. Thanks for all the work you've done. And please, please, please share your celebrations as your year comes to a close.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Looking forward to catching up with some of you in the next few weeks.
And big celebration shout out to all of you for all of your Get to Green leadership. Thank you.
Oh
And
my
thank you,
goodness.
everybody. It's been
What
fun.
a year it's been.
Everybody this year.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.